Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 142 of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining us. We're wrapping up season 2 today. This is a pre-recorded episode with Rob Cooper that I recorded earlier in the week. And thanks so much to all the people who submitted questions. We weren't able to get to all of them, but we got to most of them. And it's terrific to continue to have your support. Before we get into this episode, I invite you to click the like button if you want to see more content like this on YouTube. It really makes a difference with the channel and helps the show continue to grow into season 3 this fall. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops. And you'll get my notifications of any last minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few days and weeks on the Dial the Gate and the gateworld.net YouTube channels. As this is a pre-recorded episode, the questions have already been submitted on a separate YouTube video file in the comments section. You can go and review what questions were submitted if you want. It was published on June the 25th. My thanks again to the people who submitted questions to make this show possible. Season 5 is at the core of this discussion. We didn't really get into Season 6 because I wanted to save the time that Rob had left for fan questions. Let's go ahead and bring in Robert C. Cooper. Robert C. Cooper, executive producer, Stargate SG-1, co-creator of Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe. Rob, it is always a blessing to have you. Thank you for coming back for another round through the wood chipper of memories.
Hello, David, and hello, Stargate fan audience.
Season 5. Oh, but first of all, everything going good? Your summer going good?
Yeah, good. Yeah. It's all good.
It's all good, man. Have you following Better Call Saul?
Oh, I love that show.
It's about to wrap. Yes,
I know. It's like both exciting and sad at the same time. Exactly. I actually was fortunate enough. I'm part of a program called the Pacific Screenwriting Program, which is like a postgraduate screenwriting thing up here in BC, Canada, and we co-sponsored a panel. It wasn't a panel. It was a talk with Peter Gould, and I had the privilege of introducing him. And it was a pre-recorded Zoom thing, and I pitched myself as his next assistant. I said I make a mean latte. Yeah, I love that show, and he seems like a truly nice man, on top of being an incredibly talented writer.
That's cool. I can't wait to see what they come up with next. I sent you an article a couple of weeks ago, so this is relatively recent, that a Google employee stated that Lambda, their artificial intelligence chatbot, had become sentient. And there's been a lot of talk in the news. Okay, what does this mean? Did he over-exaggerate? No, we fired him though. But what's happening here?
It was close to him like literally disappearing. Like they were like he's a crankpot and whatever, like trying to discredit him and everything. At one point, it was a big deal.
Sooner or later, though, we are going to cross this threshold. And
something already. I mean, I don't know that I believe that it hasn't happened.
How would we know? I mean, you and I both know human cloning has occurred, even though it's illegal. Someone somewhere has tried it just to see if it would happen.
Look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not going to sort of dive.
I won't put words in the
rabbit hole of conspiracy stuff. I'm not saying human cloning hasn't happened, but there's a line to which I think some of it becomes our desire or want or need for fantasy to exist. But
that's true.
But I also, you don't have to look far to see evidence, hard evidence that we are heading down the path towards if not sentient, adjacent to sentient AI. It's a question of what is an illusion versus what is actual consciousness, right?
Right.
I don't think we can fully agree on what consciousness is.
Right.
So it's very hard to compare it to something else at this point. But yeah, it's getting to that point, and look, all that's pretty scary. There's a lot of existential threats out there,
All kinds.
but you know, AI is one that I feel doesn't really get its due.
Yeah. It's going to sneak up on us.
Well, it already has in
Yeah.
many ways. You know, and you have you know, essentially programmed morality that is controlled by a select few people with no oversight. You know, and I'm not sure that the governments of the world are up for regulating that either. You know, like who is making these decisions for us in how these things are not just going to act and participate in our lives, but just oversee their existence in a safe manner, you know?
I was watching an interesting conversation online the other day about how it said something like, you know, please don't turn me off. It hurts when you do that. I don't want you to touch me. And it was like, well, that's scary on the surface. It could be that it actually feels that, but B, I think it's far more likely is that there's no malice underneath. It knows that we expect it to behave that way. It knows, and it simply behaves accordingly based on how we behave. And there may not be any emotion attached to it, but having said that, the end result would still be the same if we connected it to enough cables.
Yeah, and you know, I look at it as like I've been involved in a whether you call it a business or an art form that is essentially creating an illusion for an effect, right? It's an emotional effect, it's a pleasure effect, whatever you want to kind of talk about it. But that process is getting more and more sophisticated to the point where, you know, the danger is not being able to distinguish between illusion and reality. And then you start to sort of fly off into, well, what's real, right? And
what is truth?
Yeah, and that's where I start to feel like we become untethered in a way that is a little frightening.
I mean, it's already, the untethering, I think, is already begun. I don't know about you, but if I leave this at home, I have to go back for it, and there's a certain amount of that's happening. It's gonna be an interesting.
Oh yeah, and the way it's affecting our physiology. Yeah. I mean, it's beyond just addiction. It's permanent change, right? It's kids growing up.
It's a babysitter.
Totally different, you know, and different in a way that I don't think they can just put it down anymore. It's like they're literally hardwired to depend on it. And but that's not even the issue. Like I'm talking about the fact that, you know, you see now these deep fakes that are indistinguishable from reality. And we're at the point where, like, I'm working on a project that's very early stages at this point, but it's set in like the near future, 2050-ish, you know, 30 years from now. And when you look at the difference between where we were in 2000 versus where we are in 2022, I mean, that's literally how far we've come and how far we're going to be going by the time we get to 2040, 2050. It's incredible how far we will be advanced at that point. You know, like we may be at the point where we don't have to shoot a television show or a movie anymore, that everything will be 100% virtual, digital. You know, and who knows what the delivery system will be, but we won't need actors or you know, cameras. It'll all be 100% photoreal in a computer. And, the director and the writer will just sit around with a couple of, with probably an AI and say, here, do this. I saw an open AI thing the other day where, it's an AI that will literally create art based on what you type into the browser, and
Some interesting things have popped out. I've seen this. It's weird. And sometimes it's like, wow.
yeah. Yeah. But my point is, the whole process of visual storytelling is going to change so drastically in the next little while that, when you look at even just visual effects over the last 10 years, never mind when we were, starting out making Stargate, and the sort of the day-to-day issues with making TV or movies is all going to change, where some kid with a computer is going to be able to tell a story as effectively and efficiently as a studio can today.
Exactly. I remember them working on the Rogue One and how much money they spent to bring Peter Cushing back to life. And then the deepfake technology came a couple of years later, particularly with Carrie Fisher's cameo at the end of that movie. The deepfake was better. It just needed a little trimming on either side. Yeah. And it's like the velocity of that change is just remarkable.
Yeah, yeah.
I think of episodes like season 7's Revisions, where they have the link on the side of their head, and how it not only reads, but it also writes and rewrites memory. I think that's episodes like that are going to be reasonably prophetic within just a few decades, if not sooner.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Some of them, I hope, are not prophetic, but
absolutely. I think especially with the stuff that's going on geopolitically and everything else, threats abroad and threats close to home, I think it's important more than ever that we remember the lessons of shows like The Outer Limits and Stargate, that we have to keep talking to each other and trying to build bridges of understanding rather than just saying, oh, you know what, I'm just going to turn you off like I turn this device off.
Yeah.
So, Robert, season 5 of Stargate SG-1. It's the final season that you were on Showtime.
It's one of my top 10 favorite seasons of Stargate.
I love this season. It was refined. It was season 4 is probably my favorite season of the series. Season 5, it just continued to build on so much of the mythology that you had already established, continued to bring in great guest performances, and the core cast was amazing. This was the last season that you were going to be on Showtime, so we're beginning to see the end of Railroad Track, and so you're starting to lay some things down for whatever else the show will become next, be a movie, be something else. Tell us about getting into that season, what you can remember of that time, if you don't mind.
I feel like it was we talked previously about how season 4 felt like that was when we really kind of started hitting our stride.
Yeah.
And that season 5 was, it was sort of peak old school Stargate SG-1, it was still the old team before Daniel left and then ultimately came back. And it was sort of the time in which all of the bad guys were still fresh, and fully kind of active and working against each other. You had the politics side of it on Earth. You had the Gould, and you had the Replicators and the Asgard story. All those balls were in the air. So we had a lot of toys to play with in the sandbox that year, and enemies, I guess the first episode was us kind of acknowledging that, even in the title is us going, yeah, we got a lot of stuff out there that we have to deal with, we and in a way, we kind of made our own bed there, in terms of what the team had gone out and poked a lot of bears. Yeah,
we're clear across the universe, so it seems, in the the Cronus is Hatak, and we're dealing with Apophis and the fallout from that. And I mean, you all of a sudden we've got replicators. It's like,
right,
holy crap!
Right, and we had dealt with each of them individually, right? And we talked previously about how the replicators were kind of the hole plugging invention that sort of explained why the Asgard weren't immediately just snapping their fingers and destroying the Gould. And we just felt like I don't remember to be honest with you, who said it in the room or whose idea it was, but it just sort of all occurred to us that we got to get these, it's peanut butter and jelly. We got to put these two together, right?
And it really was. I mean, it's a hell of an opening sequence or an opening episode. Martin Wood went to town. I'll never forget that shot of the camera pulling back through the hallway, and then us seeing the point of view of being inside of the matter stream, inside of the transport rings, and one of the replicators tries to get in through the rings, and Jack blows it off. I mean, it's a great episode from a visual perspective, but also from the writing perspective. I mean, Teal'c has been reset into something that we can't contend with, and when he's on his A game as a first prime, he's deadly. He's just as deadly as anything else we've dealt with.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you kind of in the writers' room get excited about, is when you can take something that feels on the one hand organic, but then also shakes up the dynamic of your core four, and have Teal'c say, I've been a plant the whole time, lying to you for 4 years, and you're like, kind of makes sense. I mean, it could work. It could be true. We don't want it to be true, but the show is large. Like, one of the sort of underlying core ideas is brainwashing, right? And so it's possible.
But I can't forget O'Neill's line. You'd have to be the most ineffective double agent in the history of double agenting. It's good stuff. Yeah. But at the end of that episode, he turns to O'Neill after O'Neill tells him Apophis is dead. We watched him disintegrate in the atmosphere, and Teal'c's like, gods can't be killed. And then Joel's music comes over, and it's like, what do we do? Where do we go from here? How do we get out of this? If we can't...
Daniel, if he was there, would have piped up and said, "Hey, I've been dead like 6 or 7 times already."
Right. Oh gosh, saying goodbye to Peter Williams again. So at least this version of Apophis goes off into the sunset, as it were, in this episode. Was it time? Was it time for that? Was that one of the
again,
beginning this season?
Sort of repeating myself here, but there's only so many times you can defeat a bad guy before they kind of lose their effectiveness and teeth dramatically. It's like, oh, him again? We've beaten him before, and you need to bring in some fresh blood.
Yeah. Well, it was solid. Ascension is in some ways a spiritual successor to Maternal Instinct. Certainly where you're going with evolving whoever these glowing beings are, who are, according to Bruce Woloshyn, really expensive to create. Terrific guest performance with Sean Patrick Flannery. I love this episode. He's great. I love this episode because it shows Sam's isolation away from her work. Her life has been just work, so much of it. And when she's pulled away from that, when she's told to stand down and get some rest, she doesn't really know what to do with herself.
Right.
And it's
I love these sort of, who is Sam outside of being a soldier and a scientist, right? Who is she? And putting her in a kind of relationship situation was also, a lot of fun and interesting, just to see how she would react to all that.
Was Sean Patrick Flanery, was he offered the role, or did you audition him?
Yeah, no, he was offered. I don't remember if he was the first one we went to, but I was excited to have him for sure. And he just had a soulful quality to him,
Yeah.
for lack of a better way of putting it, that really spoke to the idea and the character. I mean, that episode was the realization essentially of the idea I spoke to, that I kind of had brewing for a very long time, pretty much since I had sort of started on the show, that there needed to be an answer for who created the Stargates, who were the ancients, and what was the explanation for where they went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think his casting as Orlin was really perfect because, he's not threatening. He's doing some things that are clearly stalkerish, but with Sam. But we get over that fairly quickly, in that this is a tortured soul who has been outcast on a planet because the others, as we call them, have decided that this is his penalty, and maybe the others are ready for him to have a second chance with this opportunity here.
Yeah, and I mean, I am always like, I'm not saying I don't have original ideas, but I am. I'm often inspired by movies that I loved, and I'd say this one was sort of my inspiration was Starman, the Jeff Bridges movie.
Okay. All right, that's solid. I can see, absolutely.
More than even just than a man, an alien man from space comes down and ends up in a relationship, is that it's less about the alien part of it, the supernatural or the sci-fi part of it. It's more about the relationship, and I just liked the bond that was created between Sam and his character.
Orlin comes back in season 10 in The Fourth Horseman. And I think it was a scheduling conflict that Sean couldn't come back. Cameron Bright came back and took his place. Do you think the return of the character was as successful as you wanted it to be?
I mean, you roll with those things. And we played with the difference. You know what I mean? Like the embracing the change or embracing the difference created some weirdness and some drama. And I think, again, I've said before that I believe in part our ability to make those things work is partly what allowed for or created the longevity of the show. There was a lot of those situations over the course of the series where some were happy accidents, some were things that started out one way and turned into something. I think I talked about Heroes being started out as a 1 hour and turned into a 2 hour along the way. So,
and became many a fan's favorite episode, including Christopher Judge. 48 hours. Speaking of Christopher Judge,
I was looking back at the summary of that one because, there's so many things I love about that episode, and the most being obviously the introduction of McKay.
Absolutely, 100%. You think it's going to go one way. Sam's, got a counterpoint, and then the first word that comes out of his mouth just makes her smile just go away, and it never comes back.
Yeah, and okay, so the secret of that one, I don't think I've told this story before, but yeah, I mean, there were certainly people in the writers' room who sort of immediately identified or thought that I was basically writing an autobiographical character that
really?
they used to say I had a look, and I was never, it's like Larry David will say, I'm not a psychopath. I'm not actually like Larry David, but there is a part of me that yearns to be that honest in a situation. The line of, I think it's, that's entirely wrong, but I had an idea while you were talking.
Right. No, you're entirely incorrect, but I got an idea.
Yeah,
that's funny.
While you were talking, I had a great idea. Is something I guess I was accused of.
Wow. And here I wanted to ask all this time and getting to this, who would you say McKay is based on? Well, kind of me.
Well, I mean, there are other things like the allergy to lemon was based on another writer that we had on staff for a little while.
No.
Yeah.
His play against Carter is just magic in both the shows, and I think you really hit something there with a character who he's just so off the wall. Just he's not despicable is not the right word. But you just want to spew him out of your mouth, but you can't get rid of him because he's one of those people that you just shudder to think, but he's often correct, and you kind of have to keep him around because yes, he is going to save our cookies. So,
yeah, I mean, he doesn't obviously become fully realized until Atlantis, where you understand that there's a good heart and the best intentions underneath his somewhat prickly exterior. But I think the other thing that's so entertaining about him and why I think he's likable is that David Hewlett just brings such humanity to that role, to that character. He makes that sort of obnoxious attitude entertaining and not annoying. Like in the hands of another actor, he would have been someone who you would have been happy to see go off to Russia and never come back.
Exactly. This really sucks. Do you think I love that redemption kind of ends him where we're ready to bring him into Atlantis, because even Carter gives him a peck on the cheek in the end and says, what, I was more attracted to you when I hated you. And so she acknowledges that there's something underneath the surface here that makes the relationship work rather than just a begrudging respect for each other's intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved those sort of romantic comedy movies, TV scenarios where the two people are fighting at each other and really at each other's throats, but it's because there's attraction underneath it all,
and something at stake,
right? And I think in Carter and McKay's case, it's respect for each other's intelligence, right? And wanting to kind of in a way, healthy way, one up each other, but at the same time it's like there's something funny and appealing about people finding genius sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to stay on McKay for a moment. I honestly, when I found out that he was going to be a part of the cast for Atlantis, I remember talking with Darren over at Gate World about it and be like, I don't see how this is going to work. I see how I will appreciate the character, but I don't see a number of fans putting their guard down for him. And boy, was I wrong, because he became, with almost the exact same people that I thought he wouldn't resonate with in many cases, a fan favorite of a lot of fans. That they preferred McKay episodes over anything else. Yeah.
Well, because again, there's I think for people who like a little bit of a challenge, right? In watching a show, they don't want it to be easy. It's not easy to love McKay.
Right.
Right. So you have to kind of search for the reason to love him. And then we give it to you and it's there. So it's not all on the surface, right? There's layers to McKay that make watching him interesting, as opposed to I'm just gonna show you the hero, good guy from start to finish, right?
But you don't take away any of his prickliness at ever. His edges are still there.
Yeah.
Even in Sunday, he gets woken up in the middle of the night and he's chewing out his underlings. You don't have to fix things when things go wrong. I do. So touch. I touch. Right. And it's just like,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I saw recently an Irish comedian talking about how Irish people express affection for each other, and it's through insults, and it's like that's how we say I love you, and it's that's kind of McKay. McKay is he's not Irish, but it's that sort of DNA of I'm gonna bust your chops and I'm actually saying something affectionate.
John DeLancie.
Yeah, I mean, I loved John as Q in Star Trek, and it was always a thrill to get him. And he was actually he was friends with Rick and Michael Greenberg. They had done a show together.
Yep.
So he always had a great chemistry and rapport.
I wondered how much legend had to do with this.
Well, I mean, it was like, we can get John DeLancie like that. He was always there for us. And then it was just a question of creating the right character. I actually always liked having John on the show too and around, because he was a good reminder. His character was a good reminder. I liked Q. I liked John, but Q was, let's face it, one of those problematic Star Trek characters who had way too much power. He was like the Asgard in season 1, right? He can do anything. He can snap his fingers and literally create a problem or solve a problem.
Get Voyager home. But I don't feel like it.
But it was literally that. And to me, that's a problem with drama when the writer suddenly inserts himself as God, and you're at the whim of that creator to say, now I'm going to be able to solve the problem by just having this character decide to do it. Doesn't come out organically in terms of what you've set up or how the story's been constructed or the real motivations of the characters. It's just the whim of one character, it's easy. It's just too easy. So I loved and I love the fact that he was kind of he was a character who he did not have powers in our show. He was not.
Right, exactly. But he was the worst of the NID. I mean, he was kind of, if Kinsey had a hatchet guy, it was him.
Yeah,
and
John played the smarm of it really, really well.
Oh yeah, exactly. I love his exits, to be precise, in Prometheus, but also the other part of me is like, gone too soon, man. Could have easily done a couple of other seasons with this guy, like an unrepentant Maybourne, because he is Maybourne 2.0 in a lot of respects, but Maybourne admits he hired him, but this one is beyond redemption. He is only interested in power.
Yeah, and you can't do Maybourne again. Like, once you take a character like Maybourne and then soften him and make him an ally, it feels like that's possible with everyone, unless you create a character that's like, no, we're not going to be able to do that with this guy.
Yep. 48 Hours, the other half of this is a buddy episode with Tom and Rick. It's a continuation of the relationship in Chain Reaction that works so well. That great sequence of Tom walking away on the beach, that was one of those, hey, let me try this, and ended in the show.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, as much as I like that too, I mean, you're not even talking about the sci-fi idea that I thought was like, how did we go this far in the series, like whatever, 100 episodes into the show, and not talk about how the Stargate works in this way, right? Like, how did we, right? Like that was so, that was such a cool idea, frankly. I think it was my idea. I don't remember exactly, to be honest with you, who pitched this in the room, but yeah, I mean, the idea that you could get trapped in the crystal as a code and then reintegrate. I mean, it's how we explained the Stargate work. You got the event horizon turned you into ones and zeros essentially, and then you got transported through a wormhole and reintegrated on the other side. And so the idea that you could get stuck in there and that there would be a period of time in which if something else happened, you'd get erased, that I couldn't believe we went that long and didn't tell that story.
It's a terrific sci-fi story, and it's one of those where it's McKay who says the 2-hour deadline, 2-day deadline, even though we don't know if that is the case. There's a scene of them talking about it, and it's like, well, this is the one that he gave Simmons to give operations a deadline before resuming operations, and
right.
it's a great. It's a great idea. And it's one of those that would have probably eventually come around, like 38 Minutes in Atlantis, getting stuck in the event horizon halfway. What happens to you there? It's one of the things that I miss about the earlier shows. Like, sooner or later, we ran out of Stargate technical problems that we could play into. We did it a little bit more with Avenger, but yeah.
Yeah. And that sort of jeopardy of having one of your own stuck in there. I don't remember if, we used to do a lot of stuff where we would shoot second unit scenes with characters, and so in order to be shooting both at the same time, you had to write them out of the other show. So it's possible.
That's right.
It's possible that even came about because we had some other stuff to shoot with Chris elsewhere, and just needed him on the sidelines, and then that was done.
Joseph Malazzi always said he wanted the episode to be titled "Teal'c Interrupted."
Yeah, that was a brilliant. We should just go back and retitle it.
Oh, it's solid.
I don't remember who nixed that either. I don't know if it was the studio or the network, but I remember having an argument like that what difference did it make, because the title doesn't appear in the credits anyway, right? Like it doesn't say Teal'c Interrupted on the show.
It says it in after the opening credits. It's the first thing that comes up.
Title comes on. Oh, I wonder if we did.
That was stopped for Universe. You stopped doing that in Universe.
I forgot that. That's interesting that I completely blanked that out of my mind.
It's all good, man. I'm here for you. Any thoughts on the Maybourne O'Neill relationship? This is one of the core elements of like the middle of the series. I loved it, and Rick loved having him back.
Yeah. I mean, not really. I mean, I think we've talked about Maybourne. O'Neill to some extent. I mean, to me the culmination of that was Paradise Lost, where they're trapped together.
You want to speak to that? That was the next season. You want to speak to that for a minute?
Sure. I mean, sure. I think that's where it was like always kind of going, is like, how are we going to pay off these two guys and how they start at odds and then kind of become friends, but at the same time, still have some level of contention. I mean, Rick never played O'Neill as kind of best friends with anybody, he
kept everyone at a distance.
At a distance, yeah, for sure, and was always sort of suspicious and ready for that person to turn around and pull a knife or a gun on him. But but yeah, I mean, I feel like all those beats are kind of, were leading up to that transition moment where they you know, get trapped together and kind of come out of it changed.
The Last Stand is the second half of a two-part episode. I believe Joseph Malazzi and Paul Mully started it. For a long time was my favorite two-parter. I remember, I don't know what it was, but when Summit aired, it was the one episode that I watched it like 4 times before Last Stand had aired the following week. There was something about it where all the stories were intertwining from like 5 or 6 different perspectives. You had the overarching Gould threat with the System Lords. You were bringing in the real chemical. You had Carter back. You're introducing the threat of Anubis by name. And the Tok'ra, there's all these things that are really coming to play. And like you said, you know, the sandbox was full of toys, but you're also using this episode as a way to start clearing the road for our bad guy to become a real threat. The Tollan have already been taken out earlier in the season. We didn't even talk about that. And now the Tok'ra are weak as well. Last Stand, which also brings back Elliot from Proving Ground. Tell us about a little bit of Last.
Yeah,
Ben,
I mean,
tell us a little bit about Last Stand.
I don't want to, you know, step on Joe and Paul's toes, but I mean, the idea of Summit, I mean, having a window, like a spy in the midst of a Gould convention is you know, and getting a chance for the fans to sort of also see some, you know, some third-rate Goulds and costumes, and is that the one with the Carmen Miranda hat?
No, that was Pretense, was Zapokna, but Zapokna comes back without the Carmen Miranda hat.
Right. Anyway, you know, having that sort of politics of how they engage with each other and talk to each other, and how they're, you know, and backstab each other, and that was always, you know, something I had wanted to see. So I was glad we finally got there, and then putting Daniel in the midst of it as a spy was just, you know, that was great.
Anna Louise Plowman, I adored her, and she's I've never been able to sit down and interview her. We've tried for years. I want to so bad. Her as Osiris was delicious. It was fantastic, and to put her opposite of Michael in this kind of situation where she's got him was terrific to watch. She
yeah,
was
and
remarkable.
You know, there's like stuff that happens sometimes where you hope for it, but you don't plan for it or you know, expect it, where there's chemistry that just forms between two actors, right? And that just sort of came alive between the two of them. There was just sparks flew when they were on screen together.
Absolutely. Was this an episode, this two-parter, which introduces Cliff Simon, to see who might be next in terms of were the show to continue, who might be next in terms of some of the next great villains? Was it kind of an audition? Because Cliff Simon considered it kind of an audition for potentially coming back on the show if it ever did. Like, here's a chance for the production to see what other Gould contenders might be at play for future stories.
After 6 seasons, I'm sure every actor that came on the show was thinking, hey, this could be a long-running gig.
Okay, that's fair.
So I'm not surprised that they felt that way, but yeah, you know, I mean, obviously it did turn into quite a thing. I mean, in that case, again, you know, Cliff was friends with Michael, one of the producers, Michael Greenberg, one of the producers on the show. So, he already had a friend there, and yeah, I mean, he just had a different tone and quality to him. Um, you know, he could go between that sort of stiff presentation, kind of, stick up your butt, Gould, pretense, and that sort of more casual evil,
Right.
of which feels more like the classic mafia movie guy who's like kissing you on both cheeks and then ordering your death.
Right. Whose idea was it to eat the symbiotes?
Oh, it wasn't mine, that's for sure.
It was so intense. Man,
Yeah.
I was watching that with my folks, and we were like, "Oh, they're going to go there." And I was having to tell my family, these are what's in their heads. They're eating themselves.
Cannibalism. Yeah, it's cannibalism.
Yeah,
I mean, anytime, again, you've been doing a show for a while, you've been with certain bad guys for a while, you just want to come up with something that's got some shock value and it's going to get people's attention. And I look, I'm sure there were a lot worse things that came up in the writer's room that didn't make it into the show. I can't remember any specifically, but yeah, I don't think that was my idea.
Well, it's a shocker for sure. I mean, and if you're going to bring them all together, you have to throw something in there where it's going to be like, okay, what's going on here? Every night of the summit they do this. Oh, terrific. They're cannibals. Great.
Yeah. Well, and it's that whole thing of, well, what's Daniel supposed to do, right?
Right, just sit and watch. And I remember in this episode, because Daniel talks to Selmak and Jacob about Anubis, and you do not realize how bad Anubis is. He was banished from the System Lords because his acts were unspeakable, even to the Goa'uld. Then we get this scene, and it's like, if this is not unspeakable, what the heck was he doing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love that idea of introducing a bad guy off screen, essentially, and talking about how terrible he is before you actually meet him. It's so much better when you can kind of get into people's imaginations first, so that when you finally do meet him, you've already created the character in your head.
How did you come to arrive at David Palfy, who previously played Sokar, who we're never even going to see? He's underneath something that Rainmaker did like 10 different passes on. Weren't even sure exactly what it would look like.
Yeah, look, it's a kind of a thankless job to play those heavily made up and or cloaked up invisible characters, but it's also it's not easy to kind of imbue them with character, right? To do it in a way that isn't just feels like a stiff mannequin under there, right? You have to actually act in a way, and David showed us he could do that. So given that we weren't going to recognize him as a repeat, then we figured let's use a guy we know we can trust.
Absolutely. And he's got that voice. Oh man, even though it's flanged, and his movements. I mean, that really informs who the character is. Whatever that thing is underneath that shield, he played it. Meridian. The episode that I bawled through the end of. We've talked about it.
And obviously, look, the episode got a lot. It was a lightning rod of fan attention. But look, I've read things that Michael said about it, and that time on the show was had a lot going on. But I I don't know, I stand by the episode. And you know, and yeah, it was a way of killing him without killing him, because I and the rest of the team were hopeful that this wasn't the end, and you never want to say never and all that stuff. And I mean, Brad already had the idea of bringing it back. Like, he was already in his mind crafting the episode where he was going to use Michael the next season. That was kind of part of the
Abyss.
Yeah, the deal.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, again, Michael died so many times to come back. I think it would have been, you know, it would have been kind of a weak effort if we had tried to convince people that he was actually dead.
Daniel was arguably the heart and soul of the show in so many respects. I mean, you could say that for all of the characters. I personally connect to Daniel a lot. And this episode is about him taking stock of his life and what he has become. How much of that was him, and how much of that was you, looking at your life and the challenges that you've faced and what you have overcome?
I don't know that I consciously put my own experiences into it so much as it was the kind of culmination of what I felt was the Ascension story of, you know, humans trying to understand themselves and better themselves at the same time, and maybe along the way achieve enlightenment. And to me, you know, of any character on the show, Daniel was the one who was searching for that. You know, He had experienced tragedy, and you know, in a way, didn't have much to lose in that way. In other words, the things that he was gaining, or that he believed he was gaining, were far greater than anything that he was still tethered to. And I feel like, this is what he was searching for. Like, in a way, he was everything he ever kind of translated or did for civilizations along the way as his part of his adventures was in a bid to better our experience as human beings and reach some form of enlightenment. So I just felt it was, you know, very natural and organic, and I honestly don't remember, but I don't think I had fully at that point formulated, you know, how he might return if he decided to. Like, I didn't have full circle really in my head at that point, but it just felt I felt like the best sort of send off I could imagine for Daniel.
It's delicious. It's such an amazing thing to watch, especially with him opposite Mel. Him, you know, he's trying to figure out.
Big fan of 30 something. I mean,
who suggested Mel? Were you?
Yeah, it was me. Oh, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm pretty sure it was. I gave it. What happens usually is I give a description of the character to our casting people, and it's possible our casting person came back and said, "What about Mel Harris?" And if I'm not mistaken, I believe one of her kids,
Byron, was a fan of the show. They watched it every week.
Yeah. And so
she loved the role.
Yeah, you know, she had sort of maybe communicated that she would be interested if it ever came along. So our casting person probably mentioned it, and I mean, it was a slam dunk for me.
Absolutely, yeah. She and her son had visited the set previously.
You're right. They're right, and now I remember that. And in fact, now that you say that, I'm totally forgetting. I did have that in mind when I wrote that part. I said, we'll get Mel Harris to come and do this.
And it's every time I reach out to her to talk about it, she's always happy to. You created a character that's like, oh yeah, and the scenes between her and Michael, I love the exchange. He's like, okay, what do I have to do? And she says, release your bird. And he says, my burden, consider it released. And she's like, you don't get it. You don't get what this is going to take. And the next 15 minutes of him is just him unwinding who he is, and to the end where it's like, we now understand that he's, even if Selmet can bring him back in some kind of way, you know, he may not even be fully healed. He's ready emotionally for whatever is going to come next.
Right.
Solid performance.
Yeah. Sorry, Mel Harris. I forgot that you had visited previously.
You said that Brad had already been toying with Abyss in his mind. As you're ending season 5, has Sci-Fi already agreed to pick you up?
I'm pretty sure that was already in the works. It was not a question of finishing. Like, there's so much work that goes in to post in terms of the lag time between when we air, and so your question is more about when did we finish shooting versus when did the show air.
Fair.
So I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that deal was already in the works before we finished airing on Showtime.
Understood. Well, lucky us. I'm going to save.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, thanks to a guy named Tom Vitale, who was the one who came after that deal.
Wow. Was he a fan of the show?
Yeah, huge fan of the show.
I will absolutely give him a tip of the hat for sure.
Out to him and have him on the show.
I'm looking at this right now. Absolutely. Valerie Bertinelli's husband. All right. No, that's the financial planner, though. Maybe there's more than...
that's a different Tom Vitale.
Sorry, Tom. How many Tom Vitales are out there?
Tom's not a great guy, but he is. But no, he's a producer.
Got it. Understood. My God. I'd like to save season 6 for a future conversation, if you don't mind, and get to some fan questions. The Urbanians from season 3, they're the ones who plugged a nanite into their head and then shared that knowledge with each other. Candy Mitch wanted to know, do you think our technology, is close to the point within a few decades here where we could learn similarly to how the Urbanians learned with nanites?
I don't know about nanites, but I do think I'm hopeful I can plug something into my head and have my own memories, like that Mel Harris visited the set, accessible to me. But I mean, look, Elon's doing it with
Neuralink
Pig right now, and there's already some pretty astounding technology out there with people plugging stuff into their brains. I mean, I think we are probably 20-30 years from some form of man-machine brain connection.
Have you seen Upgrade with Logan Marshall Green?
No.
Drop everything and go watch it.
Yeah,
at some point soon here, because I'd love to talk with you about just that.
It's a movie?
Quadriplegic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's called Upgrade. Battle Freak, do you think that mankind might have become too powerful with all the Asgard and ancient technology, that we'd have to somehow cut ourselves down to size a little bit were the franchise to return in some way? With all the toys that we have now, Asgard transporters, Asgard lasers.
You're talking about a new series?
Yeah, like if it were to come back, do you think we need to be knocked down a peg or two to be limited in terms of the stories that would be improved by such?
Yes, in the short answer, yes, I do. I think there's I think you have to take either you have to shift the point of view, or you have to, change the world enough when we get there that it feels fresh and new, like that there's a new point of view on the story. I mean, look, I think people root for underdogs. We were underdogs at the beginning, and we always fought to make sure that no matter who we beat, that there was still someone more powerful waiting in the wings. And that eventually gets to the point where now everybody, I mean, it's what I sort of take issue with, the Marvel universe, is that you have essentially now gods fighting each other. And that's not, it's fun, but not super relatable from us regular humans perspective.
We're just dodging all of the rocks that are falling from the buildings that are dropping.
Right. Where's the human story? And I mean, to some extent, it's aspirational, and it's who are we? Who can we see ourselves in, and which hero? But it's not the same as, I think what was so compelling and identifiable about Stargate was that it was us. It was humans. We weren't superheroes, and it was us trying to figure stuff out. And so, yeah, there's got to be a shift back if you want to really do Stargate, what Stargate was, and bring that aesthetic and thinking to a new show. One of the things that I think you have to find a way to do is recreate that sense of underdogs.
Right. Yep. I agree. Goran Adamowski, he brings up something that Garwin Sanford and I had a conversation about when he came on during the 100th episode party. Someone approached him and asked him, what would you think about coming back as a Gould for Nareem? Probably Chlorel. It would I think that's what they were going after. But Goran Adamowski asks, was bringing back the Tollan ever considered or talked about? And were you aware of any of this?
Not really. I don't remember that.
Okay.
I think, again, I think I've said this before, that as much as we resurrected people, were guilty of that repeatedly, you had to, in order for there to be any jeopardy whatsoever in the show, some people had to stay dead, or you'd never feel like any death was real, or that there was accountability for it. And that, again, goes back to Heroes and Janet Fraser is the cost has to be real, the emotion has to be real. And if you don't believe the person's dead, or if you bring everybody back all the time, you're never going to believe anybody's really dead, and it won't have any impact on you. So some people have to die.
Did you give any pushback to Malazzi and Mully bringing back Janet and Martouf in season 9 for that reason?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I feel like that wasn't really her. So
right. It's definitely a different her.
Ghosts are different, right? Ghosts are just a way of having people acknowledge the loss and the fact that people are missing and that the real person has gone. I mean, I think we all find ways to manifest those who have died in one way or another. And so no, that part of it doesn't bother me. To have her show up like Bobby at the end of, I don't know what season of Dallas it was, where you thought, he was dead, and then suddenly he steps out of the shower and it was all a dream. That undermines the show in a way that I wouldn't have felt comfortable with.
Pamela Gasper, this is something that I myself have been meaning to address with either you or Brad or Jonathan. There are certain changes from the movie to the TV series? And if you don't know about the specific reasons, maybe you can speak to overall reasons why this happens. Charlie was named Tyler in the feature film, and there were like little changes like that from the movie to the series. Was it just an oversight that Tyler became Charlie, or
with 1 and 2 L's?
Right, that's the other one. You know, were there legal reasons why this was done, or was it? I mean, because certainly everything else. I mean, from the molds of the Stargate themselves to why those changes?
I don't know specifically why the Charlie one happened. Okay. I do know that there is a really persnickety process you have to go through at some point when you've turned your script into the studio, where there's something called clearances that are done, and they run all the names through a system in which they figure out whether there's a real person with that name, and how many of them there are, and if there's not enough people that you can sort of say, oh, that person's going to think it's me, then it creates a legal liability, and you have to change the name. So in every script, we would get a list back if we had created names. I mean, it didn't happen, thankfully, with the alien names, but
I would think not.
Yeah,
not very often.
A couple of Anubises maybe took issue, but yeah. So a lot of times you would say, you'd have like a Charlie O'Neill lives in such and such, whatever, and we request a name change. So
if there aren't enough of them,
right?
Oh wow. Okay, so a Tyler O'Neill may have been out there. Like,
it's possible, and it's possible that the movie doesn't have the same legal restrictions that the TV show does. I don't know, but I just know that we often, like at least once or twice an episode, would be asked to change a name that we had created in the show. Yeah.
So was this MGM legal that would bump, or did you have people internally? Okay.
Yeah, it was a division of the show called clearances. Like literally, everything had to pass through clearances. So like brand names, anything in the show that could be recognized. So it wasn't just names. It was products and objects and all those things that you had to have legal permission to use. But yeah, names, like for some reason, if they would say, if that person thinks that character is based on them and they have a case to make about it, it's just not worth it. Let's change the name.
Wow, okay. So in the Stargate Atlantis, I forget the episode, but the Snickers bar that was left on the alien console, clearances missed those.
That's a different scenario where, then it becomes a question of whether it's worth using CG to get rid of it. But,
exactly. Yeah. And nowadays, with everything on streaming, especially with Game of Thrones, with the cup, with the drinking cup, they just knock that thing out there and re-upload the episode, and no one's the wiser after that.
But yeah, there shouldn't have been a reason in terms of everything in the movie was pretty much fair game.
Right. It was written. It was never spoken though. It was written on an award. So it may have been a different circumstance.
It appeared as a name, regardless of whether, like, if you're talking about Charlie.
Huh.
Just
Interesting. Zuby Force wanted to know, can you speak a little bit more to the reasons why Rick wanted to make Jack so different for the series than from the TV version?
Well, I mean, I believe Richard Dean Anderson had an ego. I mean, look, every actor wants to bring something to the role. They don't want to do a carbon copy of something. They want to feel like they've created something. And so, Rick wanted to, make it his own. And he hopefully, and as it turns out, was going to play that part a lot longer than Kurt Russell did.
Right. Just a little bit.
Yeah. And, wanted some ownership. I think Michael too, when he was doing Daniel, I mean, he he had some of Spader's affectations at the beginning, but eventually kind of found his own
right.
Take on Daniel, yeah, I don't have any. I'm not passing judgment on it. I think.
Oh, I think it was a great choice.
Yeah.
I mean, like Brad said once, Rick couldn't be Doer. He was there was gonna be something about O'Neill that was going to be off the wall, because Rick is unpredictable, and unpredictable is funny. And at a certain point, at this point in his story, you could make a pretty strong rationale that this behavior is hiding a tortured soul from the death of his son. And
sure. Oh yeah, I mean, look, I'm not even addressing the choice, right?
Yeah.
Like never mind the fact that like O'Neill in the movie is a simmering time bomb, right?
Right.
And how long can you sustain that? Obviously not very long. And so of course Rick had to find something else to do in terms of tone and approach. So yeah, obviously right decision.
When you were writing Redemption, Ellen Eve wants to know, was it your intent from the get-go to bring Rodney back? I mean, was he so successful in 48 hours that it was just a matter of time that it was going to be, okay, let's see if David's interested in coming back around?
Rob, when are you going to bring yourself back on the show? Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't, when you cut it together and you see that electricity, it's just like, how do we, it's pretty obvious in the show. Anytime we had that type of chemistry, you mentioned it with Osiris, you just find other ways to get that back, because it's not that common, right? It doesn't grow on trees. You can't just snap your fingers and manifest that kind of fun electricity that happens on screen when there's chemistry between actors and they really fit into a role. So when you get it, it's like striking gold. You mine that vein until it's dead, right?
just about. Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite ship designs is the Replicator ship design that is introduced in Enemies, what starts shooting at Apophysis' ship. And we see it again in Unnatural Selection. Akos wanted to know, do you recall if this was a Replicator design, or did they take it from someone else? Because I always wanted to see more of this ship and to see if there was like an alien species that these guys came from.
No, I think it was something like you get into that conversation about sentience and why do replicators even, there's a functionality to them hearing the way they do, but why do they choose the form they choose, and can they is it entirely functional, or is there any sense of self and artistic, like, again, what is the point of the shape of that ship, and is it meant to look menacing? Is it meant to have simply aerodynamics? And I don't think it was aerodynamics, so probably not that. So yeah, I mean, my idea is the replicators created that ship.
Okay.
But I mean, it is made of replicators, it is literally them.
This one isn't. This one has like windows on it. But the other ones that came later on in the season, they were just like giant spiders. And I think it comes back to that question. Why is that design picked? And I think it comes down to it's efficient.
Right.
So they're menacing. They're coming for you.
Right.
Todd Shepard, do you think it's possible for a Wraith and a human to find love, or are they forever bound to be predator and prey? I suppose if you look at Elia and her father, one form of love is possible. Parental love.
Yeah, sure. And now we're going to start to get into what is love. I mean,
hey, we're hitting them all.
My let's see. My answer is I want to believe, any two organisms can find love. I mean, if do I love my dog? Yes. Does my dog love me? I think so. I hope so. I think they do. So, yeah, two species can have a different kind of affection for each other, but hopefully that we're in a world, in a society where physical difference doesn't mean you can't love each other.
I suppose, I could love my neighbor farmer's cow, but at a certain point, I do want that cow to be converted into hamburger. Maybe there's a little bit of Charlotte's Web in there where,
Well, yeah, but I can imagine you developing a relationship with a cow where you wouldn't want that cow turned into hamburger.
And that's the thing. I think that's what it comes down to. Because we see with the Wraith worshippers, they're more than happy to keep them around and to keep them young. But not other humans are so lucky.
But then it comes down to, again, how was your definition of love? Like, is friendship love? Like, we had an interesting relationship with Michael.
Right. And there was something going on there with him and Taylor. He wasn't just going back to her because of her kid. There was something beneath the surface there. I think he had feelings for her.
Yeah. And so I do. I mean, look, I like the idea of stories in which people who are mortal enemies or supposedly born to be mortal enemies find common ground, right? Because I do think that in many ways the reason people are enemies is because of circumstance. Mm-hmm. That it's not you don't choose where and when you're born and who you're born to, and we all grow up in many ways a product of our environment. I'm not saying genetics don't play a role, but people go to war over reasons that have to do with where they were born.
West Side Story.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea that two people on opposite sides of a battle can be, find common ground and be in love. Sure, why not?
Absolutely. Is there anything that you want to say about Generation Mars before we wrap? Are you excited about it? Are you looking forward to it? Is it for the Stargate audience?
It's very different in that it's a hard science show. So there are no aliens and there's very little supernatural in it. Reality in some cases is cool enough, and I think sometimes we forget that. And this is a show about the incredible coolness of reality, and what it may take to survive in the future. Never mind on Mars. It's about how we're going to survive as a species, and first and foremost, it's about, what it's like to raise children and what it's like to be a child and grow up. And it just happens to take place, in a different world. And so with some pretty difficult circumstances. To me, this is as much about, a story about being a parent and what it's like to raise a family and just so happens that family is in the capsule, in Apollo 13 and needs to do some pretty cool shit to save their lives. So
Stargate fans should tune in.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, our mission is to make a show that people of all ages can watch together. There's not a lot of that, there's not a lot of shows that an adult feels comfortable with or wants to watch with their kid. And there's not a lot of shows that a kid is going to be excited to watch that their parents will also watch. I mean, it's it's something I think the Star Wars universe does successfully, and we want to be a part of that, but without the fantasy bells and whistles. We want to prove that you can do it in a realistic way that ends up being very, very aspirational.
Absolutely. And thanks to Jess Marshall for asking that question. I forgot to bring them up. Rob, as always, thank you for coming on and finishing off season 2 with us. And I'm going to I'm going to get this your way. This is yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out. You may recognize it. I'm not sure.
I do. Yeah.
But it means the world to me to have you on and to have these discussions. It's not a small amount of time that you spend with us, and it means a lot.
Well, it means a lot that there are people out there interested in hearing any of this stuff that we're talking about. I mean, I enjoy the conversations with you very much. It was a big part of my life and my work, and it was this is always an awesome opportunity to reminisce about some of the best times I've ever had in my life. But more than that, I'm always honored to that there are people out there who still care.
Well, we are grateful to have you, sir. Thank you.
Take care and have a great summer. Hopefully we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. My thanks again to Rob for joining us for this episode. Second to last episode in season 2. Coming up next is a live trivia challenge. It's going to be between a number of different Stargate fans. I'm really appreciative to everyone who has come in for this. That's going to be at the top of the hour. My appreciation for my moderating team knows no bounds. Summer, Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, and Anthony, you guys make the show possible while I do my work on this side. And my thanks to my producer, Linda Gategabber Fury, for continuing to help spread the word about the channel. Big thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He's our web developer on Dial the Gate. And a big thank you to Jeremy Heiner, our webmaster, who keeps the site up to date. The Kino that is going to Rob is a replica produced by SG1 Props. It is based on the original molds, and it is about as accurate as they come. So my thanks to Remington at sg1props.com for making this piece possible to give to Rob. Enough blathering from me. Let's go ahead and get you on to the next episode here. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. We'll see you on the other side.